Welcome back for episode 2 with Susan Quillian, the relationship psychologist. You've supported people for decades as an agony aunt, as an author with books published in over 23 languages. My goodness, so many questions buzzing around. And that's a reminder, listeners do have questions, and I'm sure they can get in touch and we can think about what might be a topic for an episode 3. There's one area I want to start is green flags. People are constantly joking about or referring to sort of red flags, green flags, things that they look for, things that are warning signs. And guess what? Most of us are all learning. What are the green flags?
So the green flags that I really are if the other person is paying you attention and not just hugging all the time. Because remember, a loving relationship is about give and take. And the give bit is just as important as the take bit. So if you find yourself, let's say, out on a date, you met in the wine bar, you've sat down, you've ordered your drinks, you're starting to chat, and it's half an hour in, and the other person hasn't asked a single question and is still telling you about their stamp collecting, probably not. Second red flag is, are they more interested in the past or are they more interested in a future with you? So it could be the person you're meeting, the person you're getting to know, maybe on a first date, maybe over time, is still working through issues that they've had, maybe in a relationship, maybe around work, maybe just general stuff. If they are constantly talking about those things rather than the present moment with you and eventually a possible future with you, they're not going to change that focus. They're still going to be trapped in, my ex did this, or I remember my awful childhood. People do have pasts and we don't want to ignore them. But when they're the main focus, that's not a good sign for a relationship. Let me give you a third one. You have a crisis. Your partner says, that's interesting, but actually I've got somewhere else to go and somewhere else to be. You can be as happy as you like in a romantic relationship, but at some point, if that relationship lasts, there are going to be problems. There are going to be crises. And if your partner can't step up for you, or if you don't feel motivated to step up for your partner, if actually they have a problem and you find something else more interesting, that's a huge red flag.
Again, you've left the mind whirling in all sorts. It feels very relevant. Can you think of great things to see in people in terms of that? The LP, the life partner.
I think somebody who's engaged with life is going to be a really good partner. If their idea of a fun evening is actually to do nothing, and I'm not saying don't watch television, I'm not saying don't go out. What I'm saying is that if their life is very constrained, if it's very contained, and they're perhaps looking to you entirely to be their focus of interest, no, you want somebody who's really engaged with life. You want somebody who has interests, who is, yes, interested in you, but also interested in other things. It's going to make a partnership much more literally interesting and also much more fulfilling long term. I also value kindness. The person who snaps at a server in a restaurant or doesn't understand when you're a few minutes late. No, you want to go for somebody who essentially believes in human nature as being good and is willing to be kind to you and other people in their life. So a third thing would be, is somebody willing to take your opinion into account? Is somebody willing not just to sympathize with you, but say, yeah, what do you want in this situation? That is such a good sign because it means that they're going to be able to, it's that old phrase again, they're going to be able to give and take. They'll take you into consideration and they're not going to retreat into, if I don't get what I want in this relationship, then I will either shut off or I will walk talk of.
An area that I'm increasingly curious about are how engaged are people in their own world. There's this concept, I'm not getting it right, but it's an analogy that you're the main character in a video game. There's a main character energy. And that can be posed in a comic way, that can be posed as a healthy way, investing in yourself, doing well, like focusing in self-empowerment, etc., etc. But it also can be going to this like complete self-serving loony land where, and I guess you can see it in some people where they are, yeah, they look as a defense mechanism for ways in which it inflates themselves and puts themselves above other people, purely, largely out of fear, but also self-indulgence. Do you, when you meet people, what are the signs that, you're, aside from people showing an interest in you, that give you an indication that someone is grounded?
It's a really interesting question. I really like the word balance. If you're totally interested in other people, then that is often that you're not interested in yourself, you're not interested in improving or being happy or just living a life. But there needs to be a balance between the interest that they have in you and the interest they have in themselves. And it shows in all sorts of ways. It shows in the choices they make. Are they equally balanced between your choices, taking those into account, and their own? It will show in what they focus on, what they prioritize minute to minute. And I hate to use this because it's such a cliche. If there's a notification on their phone, how many minutes does it take them to look at it? Is it absolutely instant? Is the phone in their hand all the time? Because the world that they're not in at the moment is the world that they are most interested in. I just want to raise the issue, because I think it is an issue, of what we're currently calling narcissism. And we regard anybody who has an opinion of their own as, but are they a narcissist? Are they more interested in themselves than in me? I think it's a little bit of a red herring. Everybody is interested in themselves to some extent. And that's or they're a shadow, they're not a real person. It's when it gets toxic, when it is choosing them over other people, when their choices and their interests just completely push everybody else out of the way. And so from that point of view, I come back to my original word, balance between, as you said, caring for themselves, developing themselves, feeling good about themselves, but also realizing that is automatically going to involve real contentment, will automatically involve feeling the same way, feeling the same engagement with other people.
Patience is a small word, but it's a big word. Have you seen really clever ways in which people who are very good at communicating and being a partner, some really clever things that they've done, or impressive ways that they've worked with a partner to get over an issue? Maybe it's someone's insecurity, or maybe it's navigating an external difficulty going on in one person's life. What can we learn from you around the pragmatic part of getting through either that situational challenge, or it's oh, my partner's actually really struggles with this. It's part of them, but they've ended up getting much better at that facet of life than with themselves than they used to be, etc., etc.
This is a really good one to talk about, because one of the things we often don't remember is that the main personal growth area in most people's lives is the relationship they have with their partner. As we grow up, we start to become interested in other people rather than just being a child. And then in the end, other people can change us, or they can keep us stuck. So being a partner who wants to facilitate, if you like, to make easy your partner's development, and being with a partner who makes easy your development, it's life-changing. The thing about I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my partner, or who's the rock in my life? It's my partner. that is a partnership offering personal development of the highest kind. It is patience. You use the word patience in your original question. It is patience, but it's also firmness. A really supportive partner is largely unwobbled with the emotions that their spouse or their other half comes up with. Partner number one turns up from work and is absolutely furious because something awful has happened. Partner number two, in order to help them get through that, does not rush in and say, oh yeah, I've had a bad day too. They don't say, oh, pull yourself together. They don't say, oh, that makes me feel so bad. You spoke about grounding and being grounded. They're rock solid. They're saying, yeah, have your wobble, have your temper tantrum, preferably not at me, but I will be there for you and I'll accept you, and then you will come through it. I'm not talking here about clinical situations where somebody is very depressed or very anxious or very angry all the time and needs professional help to get through it. I'm talking about the normal day-to-day challenges of being human. A partner who is there for you and doesn't try to rush in and rescue and doesn't try to talk you out of it, and who doesn't say, oh, that's not nearly as bad as the day I've had, can provide such a, I keep coming back to this word rock, a sort of lighthouse where you come home and you are accepted for who you are. And that means that you can start to accept yourself and you can start to let go of all those defense mechanisms, all those fearful, oh, I better fight here, or I better wobble here, or I better feel very low here, and go, yeah, I can do more of this, more, and say, yeah, I can do more than this because my partner is there for me. And unconditional love is probably something that most of us can't do. We're human. But being as unconditional as you can, saying, yeah, my partner is like this, and accepting it and not trying to change it is hugely important. And as I said, can be a major way in which we personally grow. A relationship is like loving therapy.
That point of acceptance, and really that, I guess, if one's accepting of themselves, then they can bring that to their partner, which brings me on to how important it is one's own relationship with themselves. People being single, that's a huge part of, sometimes people spend a lot of their life single, etc., etc. How are there some things that you really look up to in how people approach being single?
I think being single has a very bad rep. I think we see single as somehow a failure, somehow we're not quite good enough, and therefore we rush into relationships. And there's a particular pattern here. We're really hurting when one relationship ends. So we dash madly into the next one in order to ease the pain. And it does ease the pain. If you meet somebody you like them, they like you, maybe you go to bed together, maybe you start a partnership, of course that is going to soothe you and make you feel reassured in general. It's a trap because in a relationship, you have to be there for the other person and there for yourself, give and take. But it means that you may not spend enough time with yourself finding out who you are. So my first shout out to anybody who is single is great. You're taking the time to reclaim yourself. You're taking the time to find out who you are and who you want to be. And you are going to be going back into a relationship when you're ready, far stronger, far more able to be happy.
What does that look like in real terms? Going back, like what are the things that people can be doing to build that really loving relationship with themselves? Or maybe it's a bit of reflection about things that have happened, or even, okay, these are the things that I want going ahead. How can I look out for them? What are signs for that? And just the concept of going on a self date, I think, is fantastic. oh, why do I need someone to go to the cinema with or to an art gallery? I'm gonna have a really nice evening, and if that happens to be on my own or with friends or with a partner, either way, great. It's going to be a good evening.
Everything you said is right. So spending time with yourself, making your own choices, even just as simple as, am I going to stay in bed that extra half an hour? Hey, I have no responsibilities this morning for at least until 10 o'clock. Let's stay in bed. Learning to know what you want. There's a really important thing here, which is in relationship, we often forget to think for ourselves and feel for ourselves. It's part of being in love. You think about the other person, you feel what they feel. If they're unhappy, you're unhappy. If they reject you in any way, you're even more unhappy. But learning how to say, this is what I think and this is what I feel. Check in with your body, literally. How am I feeling today? How am I feeling this minute? And then letting that allow you to make choices for you, to learn that, to quote a certain advert, you deserve it. But above and beyond that, it's fine to choose what you want. It's fine to say, I want to go to the cinema on my own, to pick up one of your references. It's fine to dress the way you want. It's fine to think the way you want, have a freedom of thought, and to accept your feelings, which, yeah, on your own, your feelings may come in a flurry because they haven't had any time or any space before. So moving into singledom from partnership, you're very often not only grieving the partnership, you're getting in touch with all the grief or the anger or even the anxiety that you haven't had room for before. So it can be very challenging, but the tip here is let yourself feel it. Buy the outsized box of paper hankies and cry if you want to, and rage if you want to, knowing that when you're single, you have very little accountability. I don't mean you ought not to be sensible or considerate of others, but it's a very different experience. And I think that it's something that people step back from. They think, oh no, mustn't be single or mustn't have very close friends. Taking time on your own is important because it reminds you of who you are.
Have you seen people navigate that whole world of thinking about what they want and how they're going to make their day great in a way that we can learn from?
Absolutely. One of the wonderful things I have in my life is that I work with a lot of coaching clients. I'm remembering one in particular, whom obviously I'm not going to name, who, as she woke up in the morning, her first thought was, I love you. And she meant, I love me. And you're thinking, oh, that's so self-obsessed. It actually wasn't. The next thing she did was get up, go to work, help people. She was in the caring professions, ring a friend to see how they're doing. It was that she was aware of how valuable she was, and without entitlement, that gave her a lot more energy to go out and be good for other people and nice to other people. So yes, I have the luxury. Actually, I have the luxury of working with people as coaching clients who maybe start off being less confident, being less aware of the good that they do and the good that they are, and seeing them grow through that and realize that it's not selfish to focus on yourself, to be reflective, to make your own choices. It's actually a real strength and helps you. Okay, being aware of yourself is a trampoline. The bounciness of it, the fun of it, the pleasure of it allows you to jump higher and be much more aware of how you feel and how you think, and much more aware of what's around you. So self-confidence is a trampoline to be good to other people.
Thank you for that. That's really moving. For people that don't have enough self-love, what do you recommend for them?
There are three answers to that. The first one is realize that it's okay to have it. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes just knowing that other people are actually comfortable with you liking yourself can be what does it. The second answer is that very often not having enough self-love is not something that's been created in the present. Yeah, you may be in a rubbish relationship. If so, there is action to be taken there. You may be around people who are very hostile towards you, and maybe in a work situation. Again, there's action to be taken there. But very often what makes us vulnerable, what makes us not a solid rock, but a flexible but vulnerable sponge, is not what's happening now. It's around what happened maybe slightly earlier in our life, a previous relationship, or a real disappointment. It can also be around what happened to you when you were a child, because you learn important lessons when you're young. You learn them from the people around you, particularly the adults around you, who may have their own vulnerabilities. You learn them from what happens to you. If there's a sudden disaster in your life, and I'm thinking there about parental death or an accident or a hospitalization, something shatters your world. Both of those, that the slow drip of being around people who aren't supportive, or the absolute deluge of suffering a crisis, it's a little bit like they leave you vulnerable. They leave you vulnerable even 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later to things that happen that make you feel anxious. I deeply believe, partly because of my experience and because of my training, that our base emotion is fear. Baby comes out of the womb and goes, what on earth happened? I'm frightened. So it's not that everybody works from a basis of fear, because many people are very confident and very happy. But our default option in most situations, and particularly there's been some sort of fear in our childhood, is to go back to protection and defense and sometimes offense. So from that point of view, somebody who doesn't feel self-worth, the second thing to do is to look back at your past. The third thing I have to say, and I'm speaking from passion here, passion for my job, is get help. There are many therapists, counselors, coaches, advisors out there who can help you think differently and therefore feel differently, and who can cheerlead you in that, who can support you. So don't be frightened of getting help.
Fear, it takes place for people in different ways in different areas of their lives. Tell us about the Torn Project.
The Torn Project is the big project I'm involved in at the moment. It began for me during COVID, where we were all having to make very difficult decisions. Stay in, go out, be with your family, be with your partner. Choose not to wear a mask, choose to wear a mask. And what we were doing there was not making decisions about masks. It was making decisions about life and death for ourselves and for other people. And I became aware that most of us have inner conflicts running through our lives, from do I eat this cream bun or do I have this salad, through to do I leave my marriage, do I take a new job, do I choose to have a child. And the more I talk to people, the more I realize that not only do people experience inner conflict, but society tells us we should be ashamed of it. Oh, pull yourself together. Oh, get a life. Make your mind up. Just choose. If we could just choose, it wouldn't be an inner conflict. An inner conflict it's that situation where every door you open has a brick wall behind it. And you're stuck in the middle going, what do I do? What direction do I take?
And is the project around raising awareness of the nature of people being torn about around so many areas of life and that being okay, and it's around how to deal with being torn?
The answer is a definite yes to both of those. I got together with two wonderful colleagues, Caitlin and James, and we did a lot of research. We did a lot of face-to-face interviews. What we realised is that there is a huge need, it's a really good question, to change the way society looks at inner conflict. But of course, those who are conflicted need help and support and belief. Interestingly, so do those who are supporting those who are conflicted. The parent whose teenage child is really torn about whether they've got a boyfriend or not, or whether actually they want a boyfriend and they themselves are a boy. A parent who's concerned about that, or a colleague who sees you struggling with something and says, I really want to help you. Best friends helping each other. So we looked at that and we decided to not only change society, but help the torn, help the supporters of the torn, be those personal or indeed professional therapists, professional counsellors, or people like doctors or lawyers who are dealing with those who are torn all the time. I tried talking to a doctor in a end-of-life ward or a doctor who is helping on fertility issues. Almost everybody that they meet is in some sort of inner conflict. So to answer your question, we want to help. We want to gather from anywhere and everywhere. We want to gather people's ideas, what's worked for them, what they can offer to help those torn. And we also want to create a shift so that we realize that being torn is part of human life. And the real secret is that when you solve an inner conflict, you yourself move on. You not only solve whatever conflict you've solved, you also gain more belief in yourself. You realize how you can continue to solve inner conflict and how others can do the same. So the answer to your question is both.
It sounds like a really interesting topic, and also sounds like your experience as an agony on has so much tangibility with being able to uncover different people's situations around being torn.
We're really interested in getting in touch with anybody who has any curiosity or any interest, who is maybe torn and wants support, to log on to our website, thetornproject.com, on Instagram at thetornproject, or something new, we've just launched the Torn podcast. So look for all those three and come and join the conversation.
Amazing. Moving on to the quickfire questions. 3 things that give you joy.
People, food, dance.
A mantra you want to embrace now would be?
My mantra is there is always an answer to everything.
A favorite book, film, or artist that isn't obvious?
I love the work of Caravaggio. I'm passionately devoted to Renaissance art, particularly Renaissance Italian art. And I know that sounds really, I fell in love with Italian art when I was 16, and I'm still passionate about it.
Susan, thank you so much for today. It's been such a pleasure to have you on.